Hello, marketing. I'm here today to talk chapter 13, and there's some in a little of chapter 12. We're going to talk about prospecting and the sales approach today. And in prospecting, we're just going to talk about some items up here on the screen, some customer referrals, endless chain method, cold canvassing, employer sales leads, and then you'll have a couple things I want you to do down here. And then we'll get into a scenario in the other set of notes. So I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly so we can get to the scenario and the sales approach, and I think you'll have a little fun with it. Basically, that's going to lead us to a fun video that you're going to get to see, and I think some of you who have seen the video before, you'll get an idea of where we're heading with that. So for today, we're going to talk about prospecting and the sales approach. So first up, prospecting, what does it mean? Very similar to what Mr. Forbes said. He was talking about looking for new customers, and if you'll remember correctly, he said they try to prospect 100 people a week or 100 customers a week, and hopefully out of those 100 they get one, which is incredible. I can't imagine being rejected 99 times in a week and still having the resiliency to sell to just one person. But that's the drive, and that's what salespeople need in the marketing business. As we come down here, customer referrals, that's one way to get those names. Prospecting is trying to get those names of people you want to sell to, and one of those is, previous customers you've had. They might tell you, hey, you might talk to this person, or they might leave you their email or something of that nature. That's one way to get a lead. In the endless chain method, this is when you've satisfied a customer so well that they tell someone, and then they tell someone, and then they tell someone. You haven't even done anything. They come to you. Does this happen a lot? No. But who does it happen to? Good companies who offer a quality product and are serving their customers well, whether it's a product or service. I guess it doesn't really matter. Those are great things that good companies do. So what I want you to do in this case, or in the endless chain method, find me an example of a company who does this today, like right now, and I want you to put it on a document. So find me an example of a company who actually does an endless chain method where their product is so good people just talk about it and they go buy it. So take a minute, you can pause this video and do that. That's all the pause that I'm going to do, so hopefully you pause the video and you found an example of a company who actually does customer referrals or takes on the endless chain method. The next thing we're going to talk about is cold canvassing, and this is the hardest type of selling, and I believe Mr. Forbes was referring to cold canvassing as probably the most common version that they do, where you just call somebody and hope that on the other end they're going to want to buy your product. And they call this blind prospecting. This is you've got to have like a sales strategy. I've done this for Fort Hays State University, and they had like a list, like a script that you would talk about. It's pretty common with telemarketers, and I was doing a telethon for business education at Fort Hays when I did it, and they called it Tiger Call, and you just got a list of past people who donated money to the university, and you went and called people and tried to get them to donate or pledge money towards the degree program that you used to be a part of, or they used to be a part of. I get those calls now. I get the calls from the Tiger Call people, and I ask them how they're doing, and I took a lot of pride in trying to get the most sales or the most pledges the day I did it. So that's one experience. Maybe when you go to college and you get a chance, they're always looking for people to do those kinds of things. So that's cold canvassing. You also may get some sales leads from some other people. I'm going to have you do some cold canvassing here in a second. But some other employer sales leads, they might come and tell you, or teams might come and tell you who to call. When I talked to Rusty at Ford yesterday, and I was doing their little chat box, they had a customer care service person, and her only job was to get my phone number so then she could refer it to somebody in sales. And then somebody called me from sales, and they've referred me to someone else in sales. And if you've ever bought a car, you know what I'm talking about. They'll then say they have to go talk to their manager, or they'll go get somebody else who is a part of the selling process to try and get it to sell that truck or car or whatever it is that you want to buy. They'll take you down an endless chain of people to try and get you to buy that vehicle. And so employer sales leads, that's kind of the chain where they come from. There's kind of the lower level people that take it up to those who are actually going to do the sale. So what I want you to do now, I want you to give me an example of a cold canvas, a cold call that someone might make, and then I also want you to give me an example other than Rusty Eck Ford and other than my Tiger Call. You can't use Tiger Call for cold canvassing. You can't use Rusty Eck Ford for employer sales leads. In fact, let's leave the auto industry out of it. You can't use the auto industry because some of you are thinking right now, I'll just use Joe Self or some other dealership, Mel Hamilton. No dealerships. Got to be somebody else. I will also take out Mr. Forbes. You can't use his company either. You got to use somebody that we have not talked about yet. And I want a link to this business. And if you can find an example of a video, then I want to hear that video. So that's what I want next. So take a time, pause the video, and then we'll come back. All right, I'm back already. Hopefully you paused the video and you found your examples. The next thing I want you to do is there's questions that need to be asked to prospects, and these are the three questions. Does the prospective customer need the product or service? If the prospect is a business, who is the buying agent for the business? And then does the prospect have financial resources to pay for the product or service? These are very, very important questions for you to ask or to know actually before you start calling these people. If you don't know, how could you find that information is what I want to know from you. So for your final question in this discussion or this part of the video, I want you to tell me how you would get this information without calling the prospect first. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll be back shortly. I'm going to sneeze and you answer the questions, and then we'll come back and do a little scenario with the sales approach. Okay, I hope you've had time to take care of this section or this part of the assignment so far. Excuse me, I had to take a little recess there so I could eat some dinner and get ready for the next part here. So I'm going to go to the sales approach up here at the top, and I've made some slides here that I'm going to walk you through. No, they're not real colorful yet. Maybe in the future I'll dress them up a little bit more, but I really want to be straightforward with this assignment and try to help you get through it, but have a little fun at the same time too. So in doing that, I'm going to hit I'm not going to hit present because it'll go full screen. We'll just keep it like this for now. So this time, we've already talked about prospecting, and that's how we would go get our sales leads. What about when we actually met the customer, or when we actually got through to them? Like a lot of times when you prospect, you may not even get anybody on the other line. But when you actually get a hold of a customer, you're taking part with a customer, maybe it's in store, live, that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about the sales approach. So the first thing we need to know in the sales approach is the steps of a sale. If you'll remember when Mr. Forbes was here, or when he came to class, I should say, he talked about their sales approach being SABRE. And we'll compare and contrast. I haven't put that together yet for you because I wanted you to do the books version first and see differences, and we'll talk about approaches, and I'm going to have you do a little research on some of them when we come back from break, or the weekend I should say. But for now, the steps of a sale are these right here, these items. You got the number one thing is to approach the customer. That's the first thing you'll do. Then you got to try and determine some needs. Once you determine their needs, you then bring about a product. Then you overcome some objections. Finally, you close the sale, and as you're closing the sale, you'll see this a lot where you start performing suggestion selling, trying to convince people to buy a little bit more. And at the end of the sale or the whole scenario, you're going to try to build that relationship too, get them to come back. We're going to use a scenario here. I've set up a scenario. I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is basically how you're going to break it down. Your target, or the person you're trying to sell to, is Tommy Boy. In case you're unfamiliar with Tommy Boy, his real name is actually Chris Farley. He's a comedian from back in the day. My day, so to speak. But we're going to try and sell something to Tommy Boy. And this is going to lead us into a video that we'll watch later on about sales and productive sales and some things of that nature. Your product that you're selling is an American Eagle sweater, and you have access to this slide presentation. So if you would open that, or if you haven't opened that, I guess I should have told you to open it already. Go ahead and open it, and you can get this link. There's a link here, and you can click on it and go to it. That'll tell you which sweater you're trying to sell him, and it lists some product features, and there's some other things you can look at to help you in this selling approach. Okay, so your sales position, you are a sales associate at American Eagle, so basically you're one of the people on the floor who's trying to make a sale. And then If there's anything else you needed to know at this point, I don't think so. I think this is pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and I'm not trying to make it too complicated for the time being. So let's begin the simulation. You, as an American Eagles sales associate. The first step you're going to do is you're going to take an approach. So how do you approach somebody that you're going to sell to? What do you notice about them first, and how are you going to make a comment to them? Are you just going to say hi? We've talked about this a little bit before, but no, really, what are you going to say to that person who walks through the door, and specifically this guy, Tommy? And I want you to write that response down now. After you've written that response down, preferably in a separate document, the next thing you need to do is you're going to determine their needs. So what is it that they need, and how are you going to get that out of them, the need that they have for this sweater? Like, are you going to compare it to previous products they've owned? Are you going to comment on the clothing they're wearing currently? What kind of scenario are you going to bring up to get them to buy this sweater? I want you to write a response there, or tell me in words, in correct grammar, how you would respond there. The next item, after you've done that, hopefully you pause the video, is you're going to present the product. So how are you going to show Tommy the sweater? How are you going to get him to go to that area? Because typically an American Eagle is hanging somewhere. So what would your strategy be to get him to kind of go towards those sweaters, so to speak? Think about the weather right now, and think about things that you could say that might help you move him along if he's kind of looking at t-shirts or something else, okay? So tell me, what would your strategy be, and what would you say, or what would your actions be? That's what I want you to write down right now about presenting the product, okay? The next thing you're going to do, again, hopefully you pause the video so you can come back. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to try to overcome some objections. When he didn't like something about the sweater, or maybe he didn't even respond, what are you going to say? How are you going to respond? I want you to have 2 responses ready to go for any objections that might come across. So for a moment, you're going to take time to come up with a couple objections that you might hear, things that you, pretend you're the one going to the mall to buy something. What do you typically say to people who are trying to get you to buy something like a sweater? And then think about some things you could say to overcome those objections. Something I might say is, if someone tells me, oh, that's too expensive, you might refer them to the clearance rack or something like that. Or you might tell them that we have a sale coming up soon, or you have some discounts or a coupon or something you can offer them. Those are ways to come over objections, okay? After you overcome the objection and you've kind of got them in a place where you want them to buy, you're going to close the sale. But how are you going to close the sale? And it's got to be a moment where you know they're ready to buy. We talked about nodding your head with Mr. Forbes. That's a good sign. Body language is really important. If you're at that point where they're hanging on to it, they're like holding the product, probably a good time to go ahead and say what you're going to say to close the deal. Are you ready to check out now? Something like that. What would you say? All right, I want your version. How would you say it? What would you say? Then the last thing, or the last 2 things, suggestion selling. Is there anything else I can get for you? That kind of thing. And be specific. When you do yours for this product, what else at American Eagle, and maybe you'll have to do a little research on that same website, what else could you sell him to go with his sweater? Is there an undershirt? There's got to be something you could sell with that. There's all kinds of accessories and other shirts or pants or jeans or whatever the case may be that you could sell with it. And then lastly, pardon me. Lastly, build that relationship. How do you in this particular scenario follow up with the customer? Are you going to call them? Probably not in a retail scenario. So tell me how you would follow up with a customer, how you would get them to give you a little more information about their purchase and their experience, as opposed to the way Mr. Forbes would do it in his situation. Okay, I want you to answer these questions right here as the final part of your scenario. And then I have 3 things on the end. 3 types of... So when you're talking to a customer about customer decision making, these 3 types. Extensive means it's something expensive and they need to purchase it and take the time to really invest in knowing more about the product. A limited is a little bit less expensive. It's something they bought before but they don't buy all the time. And then a routine purchase is one they make all the time, and it's an easy sale. Good luck. I hope these help you in your decisions to sell and approach the sale. This is it for today. Go ahead and leave any comments on this slide if you want to ask a question. I'll be sure to try and look at this tomorrow and answer it after class is over and I get done with my basketball meeting after school, and I'll have another assignment for you ready to go tomorrow.